Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic is finally out, and holy shit is it awesome. This game absolutely excels in both gameplay and lore revelations, giving us tons of new stories, some of which shrouded in mystery, while other bits and pieces are already heavily developed. Just by the audio logs alone, we can tell that Scott has thought deeply into Edwin's character, and has really developed one hell of a rich story, with character development, motivations, and all. So hey everyone, I'm Neo Nobody, and today I'll be going over all the new shit we learn with Secret of the Mimic. First things first, Tales Games. Now, Tales Games refers to the idea that Tales from the Pizzaplex is in the same continuity as the game's lore. Something that nobody really fully thought true until all of a sudden Ruin rolls along and we end up seeing the Mimic. This was by far one of the most toxic debates in modern Fnaf times. Most logic and evidence was just thrown out the window and instead replaced with, but I don't like the stories and so it shouldn't be canon. But it has the same characters and so it's obviously canon because it has the Pizzaplex. It was fucking stupid. But alas, with the evidence provided in this game, mainly the fact that Edwin's wife Fiona didn't die in childbirth, and that when David's introduced to the Mimic, his dialogue is different from the books, Tales Games has officially been debunked. Tales from the Pizzaplex is not canonical to the game's timeline. Haha, told you so. That's right. Fucking suck it. I was right. You guys were wrong. Hey, wasn't that also the guy who said that William Afton made the Mimic? Well, okay, touche. But seriously, even with this debate answered, I don't think anybody really won this war. The true winner of this battle was Scott Cawthon, watching us hyperfixate over one stupid question. But anyways, moving on, before Secret of the Mimic released, I put out 2 different theory videos trying to predict what we'll see in this game. In my first video, I claimed that William Afton was going to be our player character. Well, we know how that turned out. As far as we can tell, Arnold really does seem to be just your average, everyday, sleep-deprived Fazbear entertainment worker, except for some reason, he's just injected with a shit ton of plot armor. I mean, you're telling me that this man's avoiding the Mimic all night, doing all these crazy puzzles and crazy tasks and shit, all after a 36-hour work shift? I know this franchise just introduced a killer AI back in 1979, but I feel like this is probably still the most unrealistic part of the game. As Arnold traverses Murray's costume manor, we see a few familiar faces. Of course, we were already expecting Monty, Mr. Hippo, and Happy Frog, but now we also see the man, the myth, the legend himself, Orville Elephant. Oh yeah, I guess Fredbear and Spring Bonnie are here too, but like, who needs them? But we also get to see 2 older versions of Roxanne Wolf. One of her being a country cowgirl, or a cow wolf girl, how would you? And we also see her in puppet form as a part of Foxy's original crew. We actually seem to get a whole lot of lore back with Foxy and his crew. And surprisingly enough, Foxy is not the captain. Instead, the captain is this lion Springlock suit, which we also end up wearing to traverse the costume manor. So that way, if the Mimic notices us, he won't try to kill us. And I just want to say, I absolutely love the way Springlocks are used in this game. From a story perspective, the idea of these Springlock suits, something that we as a fan base usually associate with death and just overall bad shit, now we are getting to see a complete contrast, a complete 180 flip of their role. Now these Springlock suits are the one thing saving us from dying to the Mimic, and it's fucking awesome. However, it is also odd that no matter what we do in these Springlocks, we won't have a Springlock failure, which is especially surprising considering the amount of shit the Springlock suit goes through while Arnold's inside it. If one little water drop's enough to Springlock William Afton, then how come Arnold never gets a Springlock failure? Well, it seems like it boils down to one thing: the Springlock's creator. In the true ending of Secret of the Mimic, when we see Spring Bonnie and Fredbear, the suits are very clearly unfinished, and we can tell through other audio logs that at a certain point Edwin was just fed up and quit doing Fazbear's projects. Could Edwin have never bothered completing the Spring Bonnie or Fredbear Springlock suits, causing William or Henry to have to try replicating the suits, only to make them even worse and unsafe safe than Edwin because, let's face it, Edwin is definitely the more talented creator out of the three. And this wouldn't be the only thing Henry or William stole from Edwin. In one of my past prediction videos, I thought that William Afton stole the blueprints for Dolly, and that's how he ended up coming up with the Funtime animatronics. But after completing all the endings to this game, it definitely seems like William stole more than just the Dolly blueprints. Because when we make it to Murray's house, it seems eerily similar to the Fnaf 4 house. At first, this really baffled me. Is what we thought was the Afton house really the Edwin house? Is FNAFs 1 through 4 even real, or are they only just in-universe games? Is Edwin really just the stand-in for William Afton? Is any of this real? What's happening? But as Darko pointed out in his video, it seems a lot more likely that after Fazbear Entertainment bought out Murray's Costume Manor, William just stole the house and used it for himself. This actually seems to be Scott's way of explaining both FNAF 4 and Sister Location. How did William Afton get this super futuristic high-tech bunker in his house? Well, because it was already there when he moved in. It was just Edwin's bunker at the time that he then proceeded to steal. Why is the room M2 trapped in surprisingly similar to the Crying Child's room in FNAF 4? Because it does go on to be the Crying Child's room. Imagine William trying to explain that one to his kid. Hey kiddo, you know before you had this room, there was actually a killer AI robot trapped inside here. But don't worry, the weird robot won't hurt you. He's gone now. Gone into the woods, actually pretty close to our house maybe. Where the fuck did the mimic end up by the end of the game? In 2 out of the 3 endings, he just fucking escapes out into the open, fucking Terminator style, holding with him the code to mixes. How's he go from being out in broad daylight to all of a sudden trapped underneath the Pizzaplex in ruin? Well, it definitely seems like Secret of the Mimic was not the full story. In Help 1-2's DLC made to promote Secret of the Mimic, we see the mixes supercomputer get loaded up into a Fazbear Entertainment van. Now, considering the first time we saw the mixes was underneath the Pizzaplex, around probably where Henry had his whole labyrinth, it seems that at one point Henry got the mixes and probably used it to capture the mimic, eventually getting help from Cassie's dad to evolve the mixes into, well, the mixes. Hence why in Ruin it's designed to look like a blue bunny. Now, I understand that that is also pretty speculative, but until we get more details about what the mimic was doing in this big gap of time, that's about as good as we're gonna get. But speaking of the mixes, whenever we do finally see it, even though we do find out what mixes stands for, it is not called mixes. It is instead called F10-N4, and what the hell? Alright, this may get a little complicated. You taking notes? You better be. We're gonna have a test about this. Before the mimic we all know now is formed, at first Edwin made the M1 program, also known as F10-4A, which was meant to be an AI replica of his dead wife Fiona, who died in a Fall Fest fire. This is what later goes on to be the Mixes program. Even though it started off with the Mimic endoskeleton, it was later moved into the Mixes supercomputer as storage, because Edwin then proceeds to make the M2 code, which was the robot version of David, who later goes on to be the actual Mimic, the one that is stalking and trying to kill us. It's honestly really interesting. Even though we've seen Edwin's character before in Tales from the Pizzaplex, it definitely seems like his character in the game's timeline aligns a lot more with Henry from the Silver Eyes. But with this in mind, all of this brings up one last really big question. Back with the release of Security Breach, we theorized that Gregory was a robot version of the Crying Child that William Afton built whenever he said, "I will put you back together." At the time, this was also supported by the mysterious human-like heads that we see in Sister Location, which implied that William Afton was experimenting with robots being turned into humans. But now that we know Edwin had his fair share of robot-human building, was Gregory really built by William Afton? Or could it be a result of one of the Mimic programs mimicking the Crying Child? Oh god. Oh no. Honestly, I think the answer is yes. To understand why, let's take a look at F10-N4, aka the robot version of Fiona. There's a certain bit in The Secret of the Mimic True ending where Arnold is going up an elevator, and all of a sudden, we hear this.
It's me.
I think that this could be Scott's way of telling us that Gregory is actually the M1 program, or at least originated from it. This would make a lot of sense considering both Gregory and Robot Fiona do believe that they are genuinely humans, genuinely the human versions of themselves, and neither of them have any actual murderous tendencies, at least not to the extent of the actual mimic himself. So does this mean that Gregory is yet another robot person built by Edwin? Why would Edwin build a robot version of the crying child? Well, this is where the int part in yesn't comes in. Even if Gregory originated from Edwin's code, I still think that William Afton was the person to physically put him together. After all, the evidence that we all gathered during the security breach days still hold up. William Afton is still the only person in the Fnaf lore that we see experimenting not with turning robots mentally into humans, but turning robots physically into humans. Even upon making a robot Fiona and David, Edwin still never made them a physical human-looking body. All he only did was make the mimic endoskeleton. And considering that William already used the mimic's code with Circus Baby, what if William just used the M1 code to create Gregory? But unlike Edwin with his creations, he also gave Gregory a human body. But what do you guys think? Am I crazy for claiming this? Is Edwin crazy? Are we both crazy? But before we end off the video, I want to do a little bit of a lore speed run. Yo Nobody presents turning the rest of this video into a gag so I don't have to explain, not finding a good transition point for these last little theories I want to talk about before ending the video. Alright, ready? Sounds good? Here we go. 3, 2, 1. We actually do get messages showing that Ralph the phone guy did work at Murray's Costume Manor before William presumably manipulated him into leaving Edwin for a better position and better pay at Fazbear Entertainment. We also get to see the original Chica from Chica's Party World, and it could also possibly be assumed that Fiona created more of the original band because we see how she also created Puppet Roxy, meaning she may have also created Puppet Foxy. Nonetheless, all of this just goes to show how scummy William and possibly even Henry was with the way they just manipulated Edwin while he was at his weakest points. Which makes this all the more tragic considering that Edwin seems to be good friends with Henry, going as far as to calling him Hen in the audio logs. It's just in general, the story of this game is so well done and presented to us in such a way to where we can understand the basic premise and get to know and care for these brand new characters without having to dig too terribly deep into the lore, which was a really smart move considering their future importance to the lore. Honestly, from the gameplay to the story to the fucking Springlocks, this game is fucking amazing and definitely one of, if not the best FNAF game ever. So thank y'all for watching until the end, and I will see y'all in the next video.